When Jax Holloway, a war-scarred veteran, spent his last $10,000 on an abandoned farmhouse, he thought he was buying silence. One final refuge where he and his broken K-9 partner, Rex, could outrun the ghosts that had followed them home from the battlefield. But on the very first night, as rain hammered the roof and the wind howled through the cracked windows, Rex suddenly bolted into the dark hallway. And when Jax followed with a flashlight in hand, he found something he never expected: a terrified mother and her 6-year-old daughter hiding in the shadows of his new home. What happened next would shatter everything he believed about fear, fate, and the people God sends when we need them most. Before we continue, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing how far these stories travel. The wind crawled across the empty fields as dusk thickened over the abandoned edge of rural Oregon. Jax Holloway stepped out of his dusty Ford truck, boots sinking into the brittle soil, and let the cold air sting his lungs. He was a man in his late 30s with a rugged, weather-forged face, cheekbones sharp as carved stone, jaw set like it had forgotten how to relax, and eyes a stormy gray that rarely softened. His dark hair, trimmed short with flecks of early silver at the temples, added to the weight he carried. He looked like a man who had learned to breathe through pain instead of air. 8 months had passed since his daughter died. 8 months of nights crumbling into themselves. 8 months of waking up sweating, fists clenched like he was still fighting a war that wouldn't end. PTSD had carved shadows beneath his eyes deeper than any battlefield trench, and grief had carved the rest. Beside him jumped down Rex, his retired K-9 partner, a 6-year-old German shepherd with sable-black fur and amber eyes, too intelligent for a creature that could not speak. Rex had once been fearless, a brilliant tracker and loyal fighter, but the failed mission, the explosion, the screaming, the moment he froze instead of charging, had scarred him inside. His ears twitched at every crackle of wind, tail low, muscles trembling under his thick coat. 2 broken souls, Jax thought, and only $10,000 left to keep them alive. The farmhouse stood ahead like a forgotten skeleton, peeling white paint, sagging porch, shattered windows patched with warped boards. It leaned slightly, as if tired of holding itself together. Jax felt an odd kinship with it. He had bought it without hope, only the need to escape the noise of the city, the sirens, the crowds, the memories of the hospital where his little girl had taken her last breath. Here, he wanted silence. Silence he could survive in. He carried a lantern inside, each step creaking under his weight. The air smelled of mildew, cold wood, and the loneliness of years. The living room was scattered with dust sheets, an overturned chair, spiderwebs in corners like abandoned handwriting. Jax exhaled slowly. "We'll fix it," he murmured, unsure if he was reassuring the house, Rex, or himself. As the night settled deeper, he laid out an old sleeping bag in the main room. Rex curled at his feet, ears still restless. Jax's thoughts drifted toward his daughter, her laugh, her wild curls, the way she used to tug his sleeve and say, "Daddy, watch me." He blinked hard, swallowing the ache. Guilt was a familiar companion, crawling beside him like a shadow he couldn't outrun. He wondered if he had made a mistake coming here, if running from memories only chased them louder. A sudden sound shattered the stillness. A soft, almost imperceptible shuffle, bare feet brushing wood. Rex's body snapped upright, fur bristling, ears sharp like twin arrows. A low growl brewed in his chest. Jax froze, instincts honed from years in the military rising like reflex. Someone was inside. "Easy," he whispered, but Rex was already moving, gliding toward the hallway with the silent grace of a trained hunter. Jax grabbed his flashlight and followed, heart pounding harder than it had in months. The beam cut through darkness, revealing peeling wallpaper and a trail of dusty footprints. Fresh ones. Rex stopped at the end of the hall, muscles coiled like springs. Jax raised the light. 2 figures huddled in the corner, a woman and a child. The woman, Shara Bennett, looked to be in her early 30s with a slender, slightly underfed frame, long chestnut hair tangled around her shoulders, and pale skin marked by exhaustion and sleepless fear. Her eyes, wide, green, trembling, held the look of someone who had been running far too long. She shielded the child with her arms as though she expected violence at any second. The little girl, Lily, no older than 6, had a mess of light brown curls and tear-smudged cheeks, her small hands clutching her mother's shirt. She stared at Rex with enormous eyes that carried both terror and a strange glimmer of trust. Shara's voice cracked as she spoke, breath shaking. "Please, please don't hurt us. We didn't steal anything, we just needed somewhere to stay. We'll leave. I swear we'll leave." Jax didn't move, didn't speak at first. He saw the bruised edges of fear in her face, the protective desperation in her posture. Something inside him, a place he thought long dead, shifted faintly. He lowered the flashlight a little, though not enough to break caution. "Who are you?" he asked, voice low, steady, shaped by discipline but softened by the sight before him. Shara swallowed hard. "My name is Shara, and this is Lily. We didn't know anyone bought this place. We thought it was abandoned. We'll go. Just, please, let us go." Rex stepped closer, sniffing the air, growl fading. Lily gasped and hid her face, but Rex did not lunge, did not bark, only lowered his head slightly, as if sensing her fear and answering it with gentleness. Jax's pulse slowed. Something ancient and protective rose in his chest, but he didn't understand it yet. He only knew one thing. This farmhouse wasn't as empty as he'd believed, and the night had just begun. The air inside the farmhouse felt colder after the initial shock faded, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Jax Holloway kept his flashlight lowered but steady, its soft halo of light catching dust motes that drifted between him and the trembling woman pressed against the wall. Shara Bennett looked smaller now that she wasn't trying to shield her daughter, and in the stillness he noticed details he had missed earlier. Her long, chestnut hair fell in unkempt waves around a thin, tired face. Dark circles framed her green eyes, suggesting many sleepless nights. Her clothes, a simple beige sweater and worn jeans, clung loosely to her slender frame as if she had been running for days. Fear radiated off her in waves, but beneath it, Jax sensed a kind of fierce resilience, like a tree bent by storms but not yet uprooted. Little Lily clung to her mother's side, her small shoulders trembling under a faded pink jacket that was slightly too large for her. Her eyes, round, brown, and shimmering with terror, shifted between Jax and Rex. She looked like a child who had learned too early that the world could be cruel, but somehow still believed parts of it could be gentle. She took a cautious step toward Rex again, tiny fingers trembling slightly. Jax knelt down slowly, keeping his voice calm. "No one's going to hurt you," he said, though his own heartbeat thudded heavily in his ears. He put down the flashlight, allowing the warm lantern glow to soften the shadows. "But I need to understand why you're here." Shara swallowed hard, her voice cracking. "We didn't break anything. We didn't take anything. We just needed somewhere safe." Her hands tightened around Lily's shoulders as if the girl might vanish if she relaxed. "We'll leave, I promise. Just let us go without calling anyone." "No one's calling anyone," Jax replied quietly. He resisted the old instinct, the one sharpened by years of military training, that urged him to control the situation, demand answers, restore order. Instead, he forced himself to slow down. These weren't trespassers looking for trouble. They were two people who looked like they'd been running for their lives. Rex approached Lily with cautious steps. The dog's broad frame trembled slightly, but when Lily's small palm touched his fur, Rex didn't flinch. Instead, his body loosened, eyes softening in a way Jax hadn't seen since before the failed mission. The dog lowered his head into her lap, a gesture of astonishing trust. Shara gasped, one hand covering her mouth. He's gentle with her," she whispered, almost in disbelief. Jax felt something shift in his chest. Rex didn't let anyone near him, not even Jax on the worst nights. But here he was, leaning into a child he had met only minutes ago. "Can you tell me what you're running from?" Jax asked. Shara hesitated, eyes darting toward the boarded-up window as if expecting shadows to break through. Finally, she inhaled shakily. "My husband, Drew Bennett." Even saying the name seemed to drain color from her face. Jax didn't recognize the name, but he recognized the fear. It had a specific flavor, deep, old, and suffocating. "He's different when he's angry," Shara said softly. "And he's been angry a lot these past months. He hurt me. Not always physically, but—" Her voice faltered. "He has a way of making you feel like you're trapped inside a life you don't recognize." Lily pressed closer to her mother, and Shara pulled the girl into her lap protectively. "He cheated on me," Shara continued, voice becoming hollow, as if she'd had to repeat this story only to herself until now. "Then he threatened to take Lily. Said no court would believe me because he had friends in the system. Said he'd bury me in paperwork and lies. And then he got me fired. Told my boss I stole from the company. They let me go without asking questions." Jax's jaw tightened. He had seen monsters in war, but there was something uniquely ugly about the kind that hid behind clean shirts and polished smiles. "He froze our accounts," Shara whispered. "I didn't have money for a motel. I didn't have anywhere to go. So I drove until the car died and we walked." She looked around the farmhouse. "We thought it was abandoned. We weren't trying to take anything. Just survive." Jax leaned back slightly, trying to absorb the weight of her words. He remembered nights after the accident, when he himself had stumbled through days barely knowing how to breathe. He remembered trying to survive grief without a map. The woman in front of him, with her hair tangled from wind and worry, was surviving something just as brutal. Rex brushed his snout against Lily's hand again, earning a small, shaky smile from the girl. That smile pierced something inside Jax, something raw, something hopeful, something dangerous. "How long have you been here?" he asked quietly. 2 days, Shara replied. "We stayed quiet. We didn't think anyone would come." The silence stretched, heavy but strangely gentle. Jax studied the two of them. Shara's trembling resolve, Lily's fragile courage, Rex's sudden calm. Something inside him, some part of himself he thought had died with his daughter, quivered awake. "You don't have to leave tonight," he finally said. Shara's breath caught. Lily looked up, eyes widening with a glimmer of hope. "It's cold outside," Jax added, voice steady but soft. "And you both look like you haven't slept in days. Stay for tonight. We'll figure out the rest after." Shara stared at him as if unsure whether to trust her ears. "Why?" she whispered. Jax looked at Lily, then at Rex lying protectively beside her. "Because no one should be out there alone." Behind them, the wind pressed against the broken farmhouse walls, but inside, for the first time, something warmer than fear took root. The morning sunlight seeped gently through the grimy farmhouse windows, casting soft golden bars across the wooden floorboards. It had been nearly 3 weeks since Shara Bennett and her daughter Lily arrived, and the house, once hollow, cold, and smelling faintly of mold, had begun to change in ways Jax Holloway could not ignore. The walls still bore scars from years of neglect, but something warmer lingered in the air now, something that didn't exist before 2 frightened figures curled up in his hallway. And strangely, that warmth had taken root not through repairs or tools, but through the presence of 3 living beings trying their best to mend what life had broken inside them. Shara moved quietly through the rooms, cleaning and repairing with a patience shaped by hardship. Her slender frame, once tense from fear, now held a cautious steadiness. Her long chestnut hair was often tied back loosely, revealing soft but determined features, green eyes that still flickered with worry but also carried a growing sense of safety. Jax caught her humming once while sweeping, the sound hesitant at first, like she had forgotten how to sing and was rediscovering the memory. She patched the broken window with careful hands, hammered nails with surprising knowledge, and cooked simple meals that filled the rooms with warmth. Vegetable soup, roasted potatoes, fresh bread when the ingredients allowed. For someone who had been surviving on fear, she carried a gentleness that the farmhouse seemed to respond to. Lily, with her small frame and ever-curious brown eyes, transformed the yard into a place that echoed laughter. Her tangled curls bounced as she ran, her faded pink jacket flapping like a wing. Rex followed her closely, no longer trembling at every sound. The 6-year-old German shepherd, once haunted by memories of explosions and commands he couldn't obey in time, ran freely again, his amber eyes brightening each time Lily called his name. When she giggled, Rex's ears perked. When she ran, Rex chased just close enough to protect her, and when she stumbled and scraped her knee, Rex sat beside her, leaning his weight gently against her side until she stopped crying. Watching them from the porch, Jax Holloway felt a strange loosening inside his chest, as if the grief he carried had shifted just enough to let air in again. He was a man carved from trauma, his tall, muscular frame shaped by years of military discipline and the weight of loss. His face, sharply angled, with a permanent furrow above his gray eyes, usually held tension like a reflex. But lately, he woke to quieter mornings. He slept for more than a couple of hours at a time. The nightmares, though still present, no longer crushed him completely. The sound of Lily's laughter, Rex's excited bark, and Shara's gentle voice discussing small household repairs formed a rhythm that softened him more than he wanted to admit. One morning, Shara found a toolbox in the old barn and brought it to him. "I thought you could use this," she said, her voice shy yet steady. Her thin fingers brushed a layer of dust off the metal lid. "I figured it belonged to the house." Jax nodded, taking it from her. "Good find." He hesitated, then added, "Thank you." The words felt foreign on his tongue. Gratitude was a language he hadn't spoken since before the accident. Shara smiled faintly, the expression brief but genuine. Over the next days they repaired the farmhouse together. Jax replaced rotting boards on the porch while Shara sanded them. He tightened loose pipes beneath the sink while she held the flashlight steady. Lily collected small rocks and placed them in a row at the entrance, calling it the lucky path. And Rex, with his scarred but loyal heart, guarded all of them, lying near whichever task was being done, his ears twitching at every rustle of wind but no longer paralyzed by it. The farmhouse slowly regained a heartbeat. Sometimes Shara caught Jax staring at the old photo frame on the mantel, its glass cracked, containing nothing inside. She never asked about it, sensing the depth of that silence. Jax, in return, never asked about the bruises on her arms or the tremor in her hands when she heard sudden noises. They existed in a quiet truce of unspoken understanding, each respecting the other's wounds. One afternoon, while repairing a stuck window, Jax noticed Lily drawing on a scrap of cardboard. The girl sketched a picture of 4 figures. One tall man, one woman with long hair, one little girl, and one big dog. She titled it, Our House. Jax felt something heavy and tender twist in his chest, and he had to look away before Lily noticed his eyes growing wet. But peace rarely lasts for those who have run from storms. Late one gray afternoon, the sky sagged with rain-heavy clouds. Thunder rolled distantly, rumbling like an old engine awakening. Jax was stacking firewood when he heard Rex growl. Low, sharp, and unlike any sound he'd made since Lily arrived. The dog's fur bristled along his spine, ears pinned forward in warning. Jax straightened, following Rex's gaze toward the dirt road leading to the farmhouse. A black SUV crept into view. Its dark-tinted windows were slick with rain, its presence too polished, too intentional for this remote place. Jax's stomach clenched. Shara stepped out onto the porch holding a drying cloth, her face shifting from peaceful focus to pure terror as recognition struck her. The SUV rolled to a stop. The engine hummed like a threat. Shara's hand trembled as she whispered, "It's him." And the brief season of warmth inside the fractured house began to tremble on its foundations. Rain hammered against the tin roof in uneven rhythms, each drop a warning tapping its fingers across the farmhouse. Jax Holloway stepped off the porch, boots sinking into the mud as he moved toward Rex, who stood rigid, tail straight, ears pointed toward the black SUV idling like a predator at the bottom of the driveway. Jax's pulse tightened. Storm clouds pressed low, swallowing what little daylight remained. Behind him, Shara Bennett clutched the porch railing with trembling fingers, her pale face drained of color, long chestnut hair plastered against her cheek by the wind. Lily hid behind her legs, tiny hands gripping her mother's sweater. The SUV door swung open, and Drew Bennett stepped into the rain. Drew was tall, broad-shouldered, with the build of a man who spent more time in gyms than in honest work. His thick blonde hair was slicked back, rain beating off it like oil on metal. His jaw was square, too polished, too practiced, like a face he wore rather than lived in. Dark stubble shadowed his chin, but nothing softened his cold blue eyes, sharp and calculating. The eyes of a man used to getting what he wanted by force or pressure. His tailored black coat clung to his muscular frame, out of place in the muddy countryside, but his confidence filled the air like smoke. He carried himself with the unshakable arrogance of someone who had spent years using money, lies, and connections to bend the world to his will. "Shara!" Drew's voice cut across the storm, harsh and authoritative. "Get Lily. We're going home." Shara stepped back instinctively, shielding her daughter. "This isn't your home," she whispered, barely audible through the rain. Drew's expression cracked into something darker, something cruel. He strode forward, ignoring Jax entirely as though the man didn't exist. Jax moved to intercept, planting himself between Drew and the porch, muscles coiled with controlled menace. "You're not taking her," Jax said, voice low and steady. Drew sneered, water dripping off his eyelashes. "Stay out of this, soldier boy. This is between me and my family." His smile was razor-thin, and last I checked, you're no family of theirs. Without warning, Drew lunged past Jax, shoving him with a strength fueled by fury. The impact staggered Jax, his boots slipping briefly in the mud. Drew reached the porch in 3 strides, hand outstretched toward Lily. Rex moved first. The German Shepherd launched forward with a sound that split the storm. His powerful body collided with Drew before the man could react, knocking him hard against the side of the SUV. Drew shouted, stumbling as Rex bared his teeth, a deep growl vibrating through the air. Rain flung off Rex's thick fur as he stood between Lily and the man who had tried to take her. Lily whimpered but didn't step back. She pressed into her mother's side, trusting Rex completely. "Get your damn dog off me," Drew roared, slipping in the mud as he scrambled to his feet. "He's protecting a child," Jax said, stepping forward again. "Something you clearly don't know how to do." Drew's eyes flicked with hatred. "You think this is over?" he spat, backing toward the SUV. "I have lawyers, judges, friends in places you can't even imagine. I'm taking her back. The courts will crush you all. And, Shara," he pointed a shaking finger at her, "you're going to regret running." He climbed into the SUV, slamming the door. The engine roared, spraying a wave of muddy water as he reversed down the drive. The vehicle disappeared into the rain, but his threat lingered like poison. Shara sank onto the porch steps, trembling violently. Lily crawled into her lap, burying her face against her chest. Rex nudged the girl softly, whining, as if promising he would never let anyone take her. Jax knelt beside them. His voice was calm, but his jaw clenched in controlled anger. "He'll come back," he said. Shara nodded, tears mixing with the rain. "He won't stop." "Then we hit him first." That night, once Lily had fallen asleep beside Rex, Jax reached for the small black phone he rarely used. His thumb hovered over a single contact he hadn't called in years. Miles Carter, former military investigator, now a sharp-minded attorney known for navigating corruption and dismantling liars, one fact at a time. Miles answered on the second ring. His deep, gravelly voice carried the weight of a man who had seen too much. "Holloway, that you?" "It's me," Jack said. "I need help." Miles arrived 2 days later, stepping out of a beat-up sedan with a calm confidence that contrasted sharply with Drew's polished cruelty. Miles was in his early 40s, tall, with broad shoulders and a neatly trimmed beard speckled with gray. His brown eyes were steady, analytical, the kind that could dissect a person's entire life from a single conversation. He wore a simple charcoal coat and carried a leather briefcase worn at the corners, a testament to long cases and longer nights. After speaking privately with Jax and Shara, Miles spent hours poring over documents, digital accounts, and old emails Shara had saved. His expression hardened with every passing page. "Your ex-husband isn't just abusive," Miles said, closing a folder with a sharp click. "He's corrupt. Financial fraud, money laundering, document forgery, and he's used company resources to manipulate your custody situation." Shara covered her mouth, horrified. "I knew he lied, but I didn't know it was this deep." Miles looked at her gently. "He's not invincible. Men like him think they are. That's what makes them sloppy." And so began the fight. Jax gathered evidence, Rex shadowed Lily as her loyal protector, and Miles crafted a legal trap with precision honed by years of dealing with dangerous men. Weeks later, Drew Bennett was arrested, charged, exposed, stripped of influence, and ordered never to go near Shara or Lily again. When the news reached the farmhouse, Shara finally exhaled the breath she'd been holding for years. Spring crept quietly across the Oregon countryside, softening the hard edges of winter one warm breeze at a time. Golden sunlight spilled across the fields surrounding the old farmhouse, touching every surviving leaf, every repaired board, every scar that once made the place feel abandoned. It was as if the land itself had been holding its breath through the stormy months, waiting for the right moment to exhale. Inside this fragile rebirth, Jax Holloway watched life settle into a rhythm he never expected to experience again. Shara Bennett now worked at a nearby farm owned by an elderly couple, Tom and Marlene Whitford, both in their 70s. Tom was short and barrel-chested with a snow-white beard that curled like frost-kissed wool and eyes the soft blue of worn denim, eyes that smiled even before his lips did. Marlene, taller and willow-thin, with hair the color of fresh silver and hands always dusted in flour, carried a nurturing gentleness shaped by decades of caring for both land and people. They offered Shara the job the same day they met her, drawn instantly to the quiet strength behind her tired smile. Their kindness wrapped around her like a blanket she'd never been given before, and she returned each day with a little more light in her eyes. She would come home with stories about feeding goats, planting herbs, or learning how to bake bread in Marlene's old stone oven. And for the first time in years, hope no longer seemed like a stranger to her. Lily thrived just as quickly. She spent her mornings exploring the grassy field behind the farmhouse, her brown curls bouncing as she chased butterflies or collected wildflowers to place in jars along the kitchen windowsill. Her cheeks grew rounder, her laughter freer. Rex, now fully devoted to her, followed her everywhere, ears perked, eyes bright, tail wagging in wide arcs. The 6-year-old German shepherd looked different now, his fur glossier, his movements lighter, his eyes no longer haunted. He had always been strong, but now he looked whole. When Lily curled up beside him for afternoon naps under the oak tree, Rex rested his head protectively over her small legs, as if guarding the heart that had saved his own. Jax watched all of this with a quiet wonder that frightened him as much as it soothed him. He had believed that something inside him had died alongside his daughter, the part of himself capable of joy, gentleness, or anything resembling peace. But each day in the farmhouse chipped away at that belief. He found himself fixing shelves in the kitchen not because they were broken, but because Lily needed a place for her wildflower jars. He rebuilt the wooden swing behind the house because Shara once mentioned Lily loved swings. And he started cooking again, clumsy, imperfect meals, because Shara always smiled softly when she tasted them and said, "It feels like home." One late afternoon, sunshine poured through the leaves of the big oak in rippling patterns. Lily and Rex ran circles around the tree, the dog barking playfully as the girl tried to catch him with a long ribbon of blue fabric. Their laughter rose like birdsong into the warm spring air. Jax stood beside the porch railing, arms crossed gently over his chest, his usually sharp gray eyes softened by the quiet beauty of the moment. Shara stepped up beside him, brushing a strand of chestnut hair behind her ear. She wore a light cotton dress Marlene had given her, a soft cream color that matched the calmness she was beginning to reclaim. The fading sun cast a warm glow over her skin, which looked healthier now, carrying fewer shadows. Her hands, once trembling, were steadier. Jax noticed all of these things without meaning to. Maybe he had always noticed them. For a moment, they simply watched Lily and Rex racing through the golden light. Then Shara spoke, her voice gentle but carrying a vulnerability she no longer tried to hide. "This house used to feel so cold," she said, like it wanted to stay alone. Her green eyes glinted softly as she looked at him. "But you gave me and Lily a place to breathe again, a place to feel safe." Jax swallowed, tension and emotion tightening in his throat. "I didn't do anything special," he murmured. "Truth is, you two brought something back into this house I thought I'd lost forever." She tilted her head, waiting. "Life," he said quietly. "Warmth. Light." He looked at Rex and Lily again. "This place feels alive because of you." Shara's hand trembled as she reached for his, but she didn't pull back. Her fingers were soft, but sure. "Jax," she whispered, "we've both been broken in different ways. But maybe we don't have to stay that way. Maybe we can try." She hesitated, breath catching. "Try giving this a chance. You and me." Jax looked down at their intertwined hands. The gesture was small, but it felt like the bravest thing either of them had done in years. His heart, scarred, cautious, hesitant, finally lifted in a way he thought it never could again. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Yeah," he said. "Let's try." Their hands remained joined as the sun dipped lower, and Lily's laughter and Rex's happy barks filled the air like a promise. Not a fairy tale ending, not a perfect one, but something real, something warm, something worth beginning. And under the roof of the once-forgotten farmhouse, 4 fractured hearts found a spring they never knew they deserved. Sometimes the greatest miracles do not arrive with thunder, fire, or voices from the sky. They come quietly, in the form of a stranger who opens a door, a child whose laughter softens a wounded soul, or a broken home that becomes whole again because love dared to enter its empty rooms. Perhaps it is God's way of reminding us that healing rarely appears all at once. It comes slowly, through courage, forgiveness, and the people He places in our path at the exact moment we need them most. If this story touched you, if you believe that grace can appear even in the darkest seasons, share it with someone who may need a reminder that hope is never too far away. Tell us in the comments what part of the story spoke to your heart, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss another tale of redemption and second chances. May God bless you and everyone you love, today and in all the days to come.